I like breathing together.
Yeah.
I'm so excited that you said yes to this invitation, Samantha. So, just so that people know, I've met Samantha, I guess now it's been a few months at a Yoni healing sisterhood ceremonial space. Oh, it wasn't a Yoni healing. Well, it was kind of a Yoni healing thing in a
Yeah.
way. Yoni casting ceremony, which is really cool and is on my altar meditation area now, which I'm sure we'll get into that. But thank you for saying yes and coming on.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to dive into all the yummy things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So I'd love to start and get to know you a little bit. I listened to one episode of your podcast about I think the first one about your story a little bit,
Mm.
but for my listeners and stuff, to get to know like what led you to the realm of somatic healing and sacred sexuality and becoming a priestess in this world of tantra.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I'm Sam and born and raised
Mhm.
in the Houston area. Been in
Mhm.
Texas pretty much my whole life. Just on the outskirts of the city of Houston. I have two boys, and they are 9
Mhm.
and 6. And I am recently-ish divorced,
Mhm.
about a year and a half ago. And yeah, I have just been really diving into this whole like realm of healing of within the body. That's a bit more
Mhm.
recent, maybe in the last 4 or 5 years. Before that, I went to therapy. Like when I was 15, like I started going to therapy and
Mhm.
have been in the mental world of healing, mental health, for many years. And now, I find a lot of support in that. There's a time and place, I think, for mental work in that way, talking about it. But I also think that there
Mhm.
comes a point where you get to move forward and in the talking of it, because there's a way that sometimes
Mhm.
that can lead us to stay stuck in these patterns,
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
mentally assessing it. And it's of my
Mhm.
belief that healing happens in the body. And so I do a lot of somatic work.
Mhm.
Somatic is just kind of a fancy science word for of the body. And so I call myself a somatic priestess. And I really love that because it incorporates two things that I've become really passionate about. And ever since I was a young kid, just love anatomy and physiology. And I would I grew up in the country, so I don't know how this sounds to like city folk, but we'd have like, dead animals, or like my dad would kill a snake and I would be like dissecting it, as a kid, just like, oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
is amazing. The heart and the organs. And, one time there was like another snake inside the snake, and that was absolutely
Oh,
fascinating.
wow.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, and in college, I went to school for like started nursing and then went into veterinary medicine instead. But either
Mm.
way, it's like we're all animals at the end of the day, and learning so much
Mhm.
about the body and anatomy and
Mm.
physiology and just the mechanics of the body has always been really enthralling to me.
Mhm.
And then in the last few years have gone on more of like a spiritual journey and bringing science and spirituality together, which, is maybe kind of a taboo, and things that aren't put together in the same sentence, like we don't talk
Yeah.
about that.
I love
And
putting them together though, because I feel like it helps give people more skeptic leaning, for the ethereal or for what you can't explain. When you bring the science in there,
yeah,
it validates it a little bit. Or,
for sure.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's been a lot of my learnings over the way. A few teachers like Eckhart Tolle and Michael
Mhm.
Singer. I'm really a fan of his work, and
I love Michael Singer.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.
Joe Dispenza, guys like that, and people that are in that world of really merging the two, science and
Mhm.
spirituality. And so that was really my first like exposure to spirituality in any form. I mean, not in any form, because
Mhm.
like I grew up in South Texas, so like I
Yeah.
I've been
Like
exposed
a
to
fair dose of
religion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and somehow always attracted partners and boyfriends that like were in that world pretty deep.
Mm,
Compared to me, where like my grandpa was like borderline atheist for a really long time, and my
mm,
mom was, we don't really know, and we're not gonna like waste our time trying to figure it out, kind of agnostic.
mhm.
So I grew up in that, and it was really, interesting having that belief in South Texas, and it's just
Yeah.
really interesting. And so I had a lot of, I would call them, negative experiences with religion, organized religion.
Mm, mhm.
And so there's been a
Same.
lot of unlearning and like deconstruction in from a different aspect than what that term is normally used for. Um,
Mhm.
into being able to integrate the more spirituality and being of oneness, and also being able to hear the word God and Jesus in the Bible without being like so freaking
Mm.
triggered.
Yes, I had to completely rewrite my relationship with the word God. It used to like incite such like I don't know if it was angst or fear or just like I just don't like that word. So
Yeah.
I worked on like healing my relationship with the word even God.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
it's
totally get that
it's
because
a
it kind of
journey for
incited those
sure.
yeah, those fearful moments or like, oh, are you on the right side of Jesus? Are you gonna go to
Right.
heaven when you if you have a car wreck tonight? You know, that sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
doomsday kind of
Yeah.
never sat
And
with me. Yeah.
oh, yeah, yeah, same. But
Mhm.
so then in the last, I guess, 3 years or so, have been pulling more of, healing of my feminine, and bringing more
Mm,
feminine aspects into my healing and somatic and mental health sort of concoction that I've got going
yeah,
on in my my healing journey. And also the world
yeah.
of tantra and those different things are a little bit more new-ish, I suppose, but it's
Mhm.
really, really fascinating, all of that. And
Yeah, I
then
think after I went I just wanted to insert a little
yeah,
thing
yeah.
here too, like the resonance is that with my the whole the rediscovering awakening feminine, it's I definitely want
Hmm.
to touch on it because I felt for so long my masculinity was acting or serving as a protector.
Oh, for sure.
And yeah, like and so I'm like, no, I just want to be more of my feminine energy. How what does that look like for you? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
How
I
did you
started,
rediscover
yeah, I started, I went to like it was kind of like an ecstatic dance sort of thing. And then I ran into
Mm,
Brittini. I don't know if you know her.
mm,
She's
mhm.
in the Austin area, and she has a company called Big Pussy Energy. And, that's like her big thing, right? Is like,
Love it.
twerking and a lot of somatic movement in a very like feminine and sexual in a way, but it's more
Mhm.
deeper than like, you know, I feel like a lot of the sort of dance classes or different things like that. There's a deeper meaning to it with the somatics. And
Mhm.
so I found that, and I read the book Pussy, A Reclamation by Regina
Mm,
Thomas Shore, Mama
mhm,
Gina, and just kind
mhm.
of, spiraled from there essentially. Started doing my own work with sensual embodiment and exploration of, my body, and bringing myself out of that mental, healing space of like being so in my
Mhm.
head and trying to figure it out, and like, what family trauma is causing this problem in my life today. And like, okay, what if we just dance it
Yeah.
out? And you don't even have to really understand it. Like the body is so wise, and it's really interesting to be witness to the shifts and like transformations in my life in the real, like, my real world 3D life, from just
Mhm,
dancing and movement and getting more in tune with my body, even maybe more so than, the years of therapy and things like that. And so
mhm.
it is interesting to notice that.
Yeah, no, I can relate. I wrote a book and I feel like I had a lot of mental understandings, but then I had to couple it with like and the emotional release or somatic release or
Yeah,
practices. Because I feel like for so long, there's two paths, like like either trying to not necessarily bypass, or maybe a little bit of bypassing the human experience. Like maybe if I
sure.
meditate or ascend enough, or whatever, and
Mhm.
then also like the connecting of the dots through like the mental understandings. Yeah, the main reason why, and I told you I have a heart out at 3 because of therapy, is that I'm exploring ketamine therapy, and so I have to have a
Oh,
therapist for this process, and so I was like, "Well, give me someone who's like woo, who like is tapped into somatics or understanding into sexuality, like on like." So this magical being appeared. Like,
that sounds awesome.
so oh yeah, yeah, it's been fantastic so far. I haven't started the ketamine therapy part of it yet. That'll probably be in August, but we're just kind of establishing a baseline
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
what
that's
for right
awesome.
now.
I'd be curious to follow up
Mhm.
with you about that. I've heard a lot of really
Oh,
good things
please,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah, I will totally share everything. Um, but yeah, I just think it's so important to weave those two, and
Yeah,
like I can still
yeah.
get in my head a lot about it, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
think that that's a part of a thing too with the spiritual community, is this like what I like you kind of said it, and I think it's like, I don't know if we should say that, but it's like it feels like a form of like spiritual bypassing, right? Where it's like trying to bypass the human experience and get so quote enlightened that you can escape this
mhm,
body and like, go up into the ethers and all of that. And then I really do believe that we we don't have to go anywhere, everything is within
yeah,
us. And like with
mhm,
even with meditation, for a really long time I was doing similar things of like trying to like maybe bring my attention and awareness like up and out into the whatever, and the more
mhm,
I'm coming into my body and feeling the sensations, it's like you can go really deep into your body and really deep into the experience.
mhm,
And there's a black hole in the middle of all of your atoms that are a part of your body and your physical body. And so it's like the universe is within inside you, the same as within, so
mhm,
without, that sort of thing. And
mhm,
so it's like maybe you don't have to go anywhere. Maybe it's all within us and we can
mhm.
do both where you're going in to go out, if that makes sense, and not
Yeah, no,
bypassing
that
your
does.
your human experience and not bypassing the physical and sensations and emotions and all the yummy juicy things that we get to experience in
Mhm.
this lifetime.
Yeah, it's like I came into this body for a reason, and I feel like, in some ways I was, maybe it's advanced disassociation that I was
Right.
practicing in some ways. Um, and then but yeah, the more I come home to myself and the more I embrace my humanness and my messiness and like all of the mess really, because I think for
Mhm.
so long I was on a perfectionistic
Oh
streak.
yeah.
Um, like I'm like the more I lean into like the humanness, I feel more spiritual and tapped in or to the mystery of it all. Like I notice
Right.
more synchronicities or signs or that sort of thing. And I know, so you mentioned going inside. Is that I'm like, is this a good segue into womb healing? Like, what is it, or how you discovered it? Or I feel like that's going inside.
Oh yeah, yeah, there's lots of ways we can go inside, right?
Yeah.
um um yeah, womb healing, and that's been something that has really captivated me.
Mm,
I mean, with the idea of, sacred sexuality and all these like taboo conversations, I really have always found myself being like a black sheep and,
mm,
having conversations that people didn't really feel comfortable having, but like being fascinated by these topics, like
mhm.
the way the body works and like how sex works and science and spirituality and all these
Yeah,
different things that like people don't like to talk about, um and so
I'm here for
bringing, yeah,
it.
and one of those things is like realizing how especially things that it's like, we're not going to talk about it, but also they're so important, like sex.
Mhm,
It is so important.
mhm.
It's the fabric of our existence, and like every person was created through that act, and everything that you interact with is created through that sort of energy, but we're not allowed to talk about it but also in the same
Yeah.
idea, like sex sells, you know, and it's everywhere and it's in your face and it's like all these voluptuous women
Mhm.
and like men that are all ripped and like shirtless and selling different
Mhm.
things, and it's alluring and it is very attractive, and it's interesting to see that, you know, that like
Mhm.
contrast and polarity
Yeah.
of things. And so finding
Wow.
the weaving between the two, um
Mhm.
and bringing more information and knowledge, which, you know, like having curiosity and learning and finding knowledge about things that you don't understand is like the solution to any sort of judgment or fear or any of that, you know,
Mhm.
more like kind of, they say, lower vibrational stuff, and emotions
Mhm.
and energies in that way. So, one of the things that I have found is, you know, the sex is very not talked about, but so is like the human body and like the way it works and like some of the more things
Mm.
that are maybe quote gross about it, you know.
Mhm.
And with for women, I mean, I'm experiencing this life as a woman, and so, you know, things like your menstrual cycle and having
Mhm.
birth, having babies, giving birth, and that whole system has been another, you know, that was another one of my journeys. I have two boys, like I said, and I had them both at
Yeah.
home.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and that was a really interesting thing because nobody in my family had ever done that. I was supported by my family, you know, but it was not like, I
Mhm.
feel like it's gotten a little bit more mainstream, a little bit,
Mhm. A
but
little bit.
yeah, kind of, right? But
Yeah,
like,
or at least in the well, I feel like sometimes what I, am curious about or what it finds me or pops up, right? So,
right,
I'm like, I don't know if
yeah,
it's, more mainstream or if it's just like I'm in these circles or
in those
or
circles,
certain circles, yeah, that it's more
hmm,
common or,
yeah,
talked
people like
about.
questioning
Yeah.
things or considering
Mhm.
alternatives and more
Mhm.
natural ways of living life, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, at the time in the circle I was into, it just was not like people didn't do that. And
Yeah. How
so
did you make that decision?
it, it felt like a very like, I guess, divine, intuitive sort of thing. Like, you know, I knew what sex was at a very young age. Nobody had a conversation with me. I just kind of knew. Um,
Mhm.
and I remember it's, you know, you have these memories that like kind of stick with you. And I remember being like 12, and like this thought coming of, I'm going to have my babies in this house, which is the house that I, you know,
Mm.
live in. I grew up on a kind of a farm-ish place in the
Mhm.
country. We had a big house and there was a big jacuzzi there. And there's like the
Mm.
thought that I'm going to have babies in the jacuzzi. And I'm like, you know, okay, I don't know why a 12-year-old girl is thinking about that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But that really stuck with
Wow.
me. And so, you know, I toyed with the idea of not having kids and different stuff. And that's, you know, a whole journey. But um, you know, I became pregnant and I was like, well, I know I'm gonna have a home birth. So like that's kind of that. And we like you guys get to
Yeah.
figure that out.
We'll fill in the
um
blanks and the pieces as we go.
yeah, yeah. And it's just, you know, I've always had a real appreciation for the natural ways of life.
Mhm.
And a real connection to nature, and that's been really challenging living in Houston because Houston's not really set up
Mm.
for that
Mhm.
sort of
Yeah.
outdoor life. But yeah, so um back to the doing like things differently, I suppose, and having
Mhm.
the home birth and feeling like I needed to educate people about this sort of stuff. Like, no, it's actually really natural, and like what's
Mhm.
actually harmful is potentially not having it this way, you know? And
Yeah.
all the medical interventions that are not always necessary. And
Mhm.
you know, depending on whatever, I have my own beliefs about all that, but I think I believe that, you know, most of the way that it's done right now, it's become very medicalized and very you know, treated as a disease when it's a totally natural phenomena. And I don't believe
Mhm.
you know, anyway, I won't get into that. But
We can
but
go into that if you wanna go into that.
No, I just think that it's more of a natural thing, and the, interventions and the challenges that people face wouldn't be so prevalent if we weren't messing with the natural order of things.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
I'll say about that much on that.
Mhm.
And so the same thing with like breastfeeding and things like that, it's like people have a hard time with that. So there's been a lot of different little things in my life that have felt very natural, and a bit confusing to some parts of me. Like, why is this questioned even?
Mhm.
So
Mm.
one of those things is about, sexuality and the menstrual cycle and the phases of the menstrual cycle, not just the bleed phase. I've
Yeah.
gotten really into that, and that's one of the things that I educate about, is our cycle and our anatomy as well. Because that's another thing,
Mhm.
you have sex ed, but they don't really. I feel like you're not really taught properly. It's very like, this is what it
Yeah.
is, and we're gonna like kind of,
Jane will
this is what
tell
it
you.
does,
Yeah.
and then we'll move on. We're not, don't ask any questions.
Mhm.
So it's very
Yeah.
like, what's going on here? Um,
Mhm.
and
Don't touch
then
one, you'll get pregnant or you'll
exactly, yeah, yeah, it's
straight to
so
your face,
interesting.
at least. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm really into also like natural forms of birth control and things like that,
Mhm.
and educating about your
Me too.
cycle in that way because birth control, I've got a vendetta against.
Yeah, kind of same. Like, well, when I was on it, it seemed like, okay, why is this being the only thing that's recommended? And then it messed with me, like libido,
Yeah,
acne, just overall energetic level. So I'm like, well, I'll take my chances, or I'll figure out another path versus,
sure.
um, yeah, that's at least like my own personal experience with it. So I
Yeah,
love that you teach it.
yeah, and I think it's really, a shame, and it's not necessarily, the fault of any one medical professional. It's like the system as a
Hmm.
whole and what they're taught and what they're,
Yeah.
told to share and different things like that. But, it's a common misconception that birth control balances your hormones, and it
Hmm.
doesn't. It like equalizes them, which women are not meant to have that sort of a cycle.
Hmm.
And whenever you're off of it and you have the bleed, it's a discharge sort of like, bleed. It's not like an actual dropping of the egg and that whole cycle that we go through. And so you have, millions of women on that sort of stuff, and it's really, really, you know, I don't think that's good for people.
Me either, because I'm like, how do I listen to the signals that my body is trying to communicate if I'm putting something in that throws or
Hmm.
equalizes them?
Yeah, on like
And
such a consistent and constant
maybe there's a
basis.
reason why they want to, yeah,
Yeah.
you
And
know, make,
there's a lot of different ways. I have a friend of mine that does, a lot of nutritional work and is really, really
mm,
skilled in that, in balancing hormones in that sort of a natural way, where just by the food that you eat. And it's not, she's really
mm-hmm,
adamant about not like, constricting and like, don't do this, don't do that, but like, what can we do? And, she's had a
mm-hmm,
lot of really, really great success. And I think that that's, that sort of work is really, really amazing in the women's health world. That's the kind of stuff that
mm-hmm.
I'd like to see more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since you mentioned like the cycles, I'd love to like even just give a breakdown or of the
Yeah,
female cycle maybe because I
yeah.
think that I looked the other week and I saw like my listeners are used to be about 50-50, and I was like, oh, that's cool, but now it seems to be leaning 70% male and 30% female. And so I
Oh,
just want to do a little quick PSA, guys, that
yeah,
knowing the
yeah.
female cycle is so beneficial to you too.
I love
And
that you bring that up because actually I recently, I'm trying to remember. I don't think it's aired yet, but on my podcast, so me and my partner is my co-host, and
oh,
oops.
cool.
Yeah, and he's very well versed in this stuff because, he's in relationship with me. And he knows where I am in my cycle, and so that's been really supportive, just in partnership, like, and as an individual to have
Hmm.
somebody who also knows like kind of what to expect and all that. But
Hmm.
we recorded a podcast together about the benefits of that, and
Oh,
why it's
cool.
important for men to know that and to be of support in that. And there's a lot of, conversation around. I know I have a friend of mine that I shared about this in the podcast, that her and her partner would be in this cycle of like, reconsidering their marriage every month,
Mm.
because it was like a little bit like
Mm.
this certain phase in her cycle that was like being triggered by him and his part. It's just a
Mm.
fascinating way that relationships work. I love that sort of stuff, like
Mhm.
dynamics and differences in the way that they play onto each other, and attachment styles and the way that they like ebb and flow. All that stuff is just
Mhm.
absolutely fascinating to me. So I love
Me too,
relationship
yeah.
dynamics. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um but yeah, I can break it down a little bit and give a little like
Yeah, I love
overview.
that.
Um
Mhm.
the way that I like to share about it is like the seasons, because that's something that everybody
Mm.
experiences and can like totally understand and get a
Mhm.
grasp on. I just like try to mix two words there. Um, so if you think about, we have winter, we have spring, we have summer, and
Mhm.
we have fall. And so the menstrual phase is correlation to winter. So it's like this
Mhm.
death, this release, this you go more inward, lower energy production, outward stuff. It's more about going in and releasing things, and you get what I'm saying there.
Mhm.
And so then we move into spring, and spring is the time, after your bleed is over. It's also called the follicular phase, and it's the time where energy is coming back up, and you have a lot more
Me
energy,
this
and like
week.
yeah, like
Yeah.
spring cleaning, and let's go and start some projects, and more
Mhm.
outward focus and outward input. You might be more outgoing during that time. And
Mm.
so then you
Mhm.
move into summer. And it's interesting too, because like all of these different things, like they're different portions of time, right? They're not all equal the way that like our seasons
Mhm.
are. So I live in Texas, and summer is very long, but the ovulation
Yeah, it is.
phase in the woman is not very long.
Yeah.
So the ovulation is like 1 day, 2 days, where there's
Mhm.
this brief little period of time where you can get pregnant. And that's why I think natural birth control is really interesting, because people, like a lot of people, don't even know that, which is like so
Yeah.
basic. um
Mhm.
and to also be consideration that like sperm can linger for a few days, and so there's
Mhm.
that to be in consideration whenever you're thinking about like natural family planning. But at any rate, summer is like ovulation. Ovulation is like the
Mhm.
peak of the cycle. It's what we've worked so hard
Mhm.
for. We get to pick our fruit and have yummy peaches, and all these different things.
Yes.
So we've done all this work, the rest, we've done all the growing and all
Suck
this
that
work to
peach.
have the peach. Yeah. um yeah, I love peaches. And so that's ovulation. And again, it's more outward. There's more energy. The
Mhm.
birds are flying around, the bees are buzzing, the butterflies. Like there's so much energy happening,
Mm.
and so that's like the
Mhm.
peak cycle. And then you move into fall, which is the luteal, and the luteal is the longest phase of the cycle. It's
Of
about
course.
yeah, it's about like 11 to 14 days. So it could be about 2 weeks, depending on, all kinds of things that we,
Mhm.
don't have time to get into today.
Yeah.
But there's so many different factors, and I find that fascinating as well. But so with the luteal, you can break it down into like early luteal and late luteal, because it is so long. And there is kind of this transitional period. So the ovulation happens, and if you're not attempting to get pregnant, or that doesn't happen, you start to you start to lose your leaves, and your body starts to release the tissues and get ready for the bleed. And so there's all of that happening. There's some hormone dipping. And so if you think about fall, it's a transitional period of like this bright aliveness into going into darkness and rest and recuperation. And so
Mm.
the early luteal is kind of, we're starting to slow down with our energy. And then late luteal is the part that um is hated by most.
Yeah.
It's like that PMS, we're very
The most
moody.
challenging.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
challenging. And it's interesting
It's definitely
because
my yearning for horizontal time. I didn't mean to interrupt
yeah.
you, but
Yeah, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
was just
It's
saying, like, that's the time where I'm like, I wanna be horizontal and be inward and
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
or,
it's the start of that.
nested. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, and it's interesting because I like as I've realized, learned this myself, and then started living a little bit more cyclically, where that's a whole thing too.
Mhm.
And I did a whole series on my podcast for the month
Mm,
of March.
cool.
I called it March Menstruation Madness.
Oh, cool. I'll go give it a listen.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had 4 women come on and just talking about the cycle and different ways that
Oh,
you can
cool.
sync
Yeah.
different aspects of your life to it, like through nutrition. There's different
Mhm.
ways to eat throughout the cycle,
Exercise. Yeah.
exercise, with correlation with the moon and what all that means. And then there was a woman on there that talked about microdosing and psilocybin in a different
Mm.
way. Because a lot
Oh,
of the
cool. I definitely wanna listen to that.
yeah, yeah. So I have that. Um, and yeah, it's really fascinating, the way how we're different. We're like so many different people in 1 month, right? And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things is that it's luteal is very can be very challenging. And a lot of the education that I do in my fascination with it is like luteal's actually become like late luteal has become one of my favorite parts of my cycle. Like I look forward to
Mm.
it. Um, Not because it's gotten necessarily easier, but it's really fascinating to see the lessons that are available there.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
Because, we think like, oh, I'm just moody or I'm just irritated about something, but like truly, there's also different archetypes associated with those things. I'll just go through that quickly too, where
Yeah, sure.
in spring, it's kind of like the maiden energy, new, blossoming, innocent, all that. And then, of course, ovulation is mother energy, where we're like full and in bloom and, ready prepared for motherhood potentially. And then fall, which is ironic because there's people talk about the archetypes of women, and it's like the maiden, the mother, and the wise woman. And they leave out
Mhm.
the wild woman, which is fall.
Oh. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that, yeah.
And
I'm like,
so
"No, let's not leave her out."
I know, we gotta reclaim her. So, the wild
Mhm.
woman is potentially chaotic, emotional, and also there's a lot of like righteousness, not in the bad way, but like, like courage and sense
Mhm.
of like dignity in a way, I guess. I'm having a hard
Mhm.
time coming up with words for that. But there is this like sense of wildness, but wildness in a really beautiful way that if you can be curious, there's also an oracle in the wildness,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
being in tune with that. And I've noticed that with my partner, and that's something that he talks about a bit on that episode. Is the just the challenges that have come up in our relationship, particularly in that phase. And if we can be
Mm.
calm enough, to not like bite each other's heads off about it, there's a lot of really um a lot of wisdom there and a lot of support
Mhm.
to our partnership and like things that are not working and
Mm.
things we get to reassess and look at. Um so anyway, that's been something I'm like, oh, what's going to happen this time? We kind of joke a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it's not always fun, but it can be, and we're both kind
Yeah.
of self-growth junkies. So I think that that's like a really fun.
Committed to the curiosity.
Yeah, yeah. Um yeah, so then you have your menstrual phase, which is the wise woman, and it's more quiet and calm and inward and all
Mhm.
that. And
Yeah, I definitely feel like intuitive insights arise a lot
mhm.
when I am, like, menstruating,
Mhm.
and I love leaning into, like, that self-reflection and asking myself questions, or I feel like a lot of things bubble up to the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that came through this last cycle for me with in regards to my luteal recently was um realizing that like, with the cycle and kind of also with like societal expectations on women and how we're like meant to be in the world and act, and it's like the the maiden and the mother energy are more acceptable socially. It's like
Yeah.
giving and nurturing and bubbly and innocent. And then on the
Mm-hmm.
other end of, the wild woman and potentially even the crone or the wise woman is like, we don't
Mm-hmm.
want to hear from that. And like, you're too chaotic and you're too this, too that, too whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the late luteal, it's this going from more outward, more socially acceptable to like more inward
Mm-hmm.
and more like chaotic potentially. But
Mm-hmm.
there's this transition time where, I'm still trying to operate out of that, the other, what my expectations are, or expectations that are
Mm-hmm.
put on to me and that I,
Mm-hmm.
accept as my own. But then there's this wrestling inside me like, no, it's time to go inward and like stop taking so much information in, and like it's a time for rest. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was a lot of wisdom there for me, um to have that
Yes.
space of rest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel
Yeah.
like back in the day, didn't they used to like honor women in that phase of the cycle? I feel like
Yeah,
I've
the red
read or
tent.
someone mentioned, yeah, yeah, the red
Mhm.
tent.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow.
Yeah, women would go and bleed together and come back with all kinds of messages and whatnot for the village. And
Yeah.
they were respected and listened to, and
Mm-hmm.
those messages went on. And that was one of the things that he talked about in that podcast episode. My partner was like, there is a lot of wisdom, and men get to listen, and that's part of the thing I think that can be
Mm-hmm.
challenging is women don't feel listened to.
Yeah. And like we want to be heard.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
That there's wisdom even if it's emotional. Oh my god,
Yeah. Oh my God, my emotions are such teachers.
for sure.
And yeah, I'm like, God, I remember. And I think that's probably why they scared me for a long time because they were so intense and they're like in
Yeah.
different directions too. But I think there are so many wisdom or insights, and now kind of leaning into a little bit of the which I think I read in Existential Kink, like
I'm reading
emotions
that now.
or sensation, yeah, as truth in
Mhm.
my body. And so it's like
Yeah.
if I feel a ripple of something and then I'm like, oh, okay, what kind of truth is that showing me? Or I don't know.
Yeah.
And leaning into listening to that more.
Mhm.
Hmm. And just, I'm so emotional. I've got a lot of water in my chart too. Like zero fire, but a lot of water.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny.
uh, yeah, I'd love to touch on like, um, what are some ways that either like the cycle or like leaning in more to cyclical living or like the womb wisdom or yeah, any practices that you love to practice or do or implement into your day or week or month or life in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah. Well, I think, for people just starting out, I think the first step is to start
Yeah.
tracking your cycle, and
Mm,
just be in relationship with it.
mhm,
And if you think about
mm,
the way that you're in relationship with anything or anybody is you spend time and
mm,
energy with it.
mm,
Um, and
mm.
so, being
That's a
aware
good point.
of when it's coming or what
Mhm,
phase you're in,
mm.
is really, really a good starting place, and then I imagine it'll snowball from there, and
Yeah,
different
yeah.
teachers will come into your life and learnings and
Mhm, mhm.
different practices that work for you, because I do really believe that healing is so individual. It's like
Yeah.
what works for me might not work for somebody else. And but yeah, I mean that's I kind of am a little basic about that, honestly. So
Mhm.
I keep track of it. I know where I'm at, and I don't do the like temperature to see like
Yeah.
exactly. I just keep track of what day I'm on, and have relationship with when my cycle is coming and when the luteal is coming,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, same. I have an app and I'm like, okay, I know and I can tell like just consistency wise, I'm like, oh, I'm ovulating.
yeah.
Or or like, I'm like, if I'm really horny, I'm like, it must be ovulating. Sometimes I'm like, that's a great window,
Yeah.
guys.
Feral, you know?
Yeah. I'm like, do I like him or am I just ovulating?
Yeah, yeah, you gotta be careful
Um,
about that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So there's that, and, like,
yeah.
I
There's
think too, just, like, forming a relationship with your body, you know, and however
yeah.
that looks for me, breath work and dance have been really like, ecstatic dance
Mm.
or,
Mhm.
slow, sensual using of the senses where you're using touch a
Mm.
lot, breath and
Mhm.
movement and sound, and, just finding a cool playlist that you enjoy and putting on a couple
Mhm.
songs. It doesn't have to be like a really long, drawn out thing. It's just having connection to your body and the sensations of this experience here, and
Mhm.
having relationship to your body is a really, really good place to start and continue on that journey too. To have relationship with your body. A lot of us try to escape the body as much as possible with all kinds of different activities and
Oh,
people go
yeah.
on ayahuasca and mushrooms and alcohol and like all kinds of things to escape the body. And,
Mhm.
all
Social
those things.
media.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm on a cleanse right
Mhm.
now, which has been really great.
Oh, how's that going?
Good. I kind of have been like halfway committed for like the first part of this month,
Mhm.
but this last half I deleted the app and I'm just not going to get on
Oh,
it. And
wow.
it's been really interesting to notice like the habits that I formed around it, and then also
Yeah.
the presence that I have without it. And so,
Mm.
with my kids and with
Yeah.
who I'm with and
Oh, for
stuff.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I did that once where I was like, "Oh, I found my fingers just going automatically to where the app lived on my
Yeah.
phone." I'm like, "Whoa, like, that's default
Yeah.
mode?" Like, no, let's just take a step back.
Yeah, it's been
And
really interesting. But
yeah, I'm like, "Why
yeah,
do I have the yearning to" how long are you gonna do it for? Or have you
just till
decided?
the end of the month, so it's like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I have
Okay,
my
cool.
boys a little bit differently this month, uh,
Mm.
as far as like, custody and childcare and different things
Mhm.
like that. So I figured it's a good time to like
Oh,
be
cool.
intentional with them and also take a break. And yeah, I think it'll be good. So far, so good.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And like there's an intentional fast or social media fast. Well, I
Mhm.
definitely want to touch on I'm curious about how the Yoni casting came into
Yeah.
be because
Yeah.
I remember like watching Fried Green Tomatoes like way back in the day and like she brought out a mirror or something and like looked at her pussy and I'm and so I think I did it once then, but um like whenever yeah, I'll just love for you to share like how that idea came to fruition or like the story
Yeah.
behind it. I'm curious.
Well, I think it started with that book Pussy. She that's
Yeah.
some of the homework that she gives you is like getting in relationship with your pussy. It's like we
Mm,
start to get in relationship with our bodies, but it's like, no, we don't touch down there, we don't look down there. Like I don't even know what it does. I don't even want to touch it. Weird
mhm,
things come out of it. It stinks or it smells different sometimes. And like, there's all these
mhm,
different things. And so having a relationship with it and knowing how it works and forming like a self-pleasure practice and all
mhm,
those things. And so it was around that journey that I found this girl who was making kits. She's actually in
mm.
Australia. And I was like, man, like I wish somebody here did that. And
Oh,
little did I know that that was going to be my journey. Oh my
that's so
gosh.
cool.
I know. She's like, "Oh, I have this kit." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Like I'd like to do it and just, have it," and kind of went about it in a very like masculine, goal oriented, like I just want the thing.
Mhm,
But it was very much a more of an experience than I had expected it to be, and like, like the experience of it and like asking
mhm,
permission. I don't know that I had ever asked permission before that day.
mm,
And
mhm,
that was a really beautiful thing for me.
mm,
And so whenever I do the yoni casting ceremonies, that's really important to like make it a ceremony and have it be very intentional, and also maintain our attention and consciousness while we're there, because I know
mhm,
that a lot of women and me too, um, would go to the gynecologist, or even sometimes in sexual experiences, it like I detach, just like disassociate
Mhm.
and like kind of pretend like I'm not really here, or I'm not, different things like that. And so,
Yeah, like, just get this over with type of thing.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And so bringing more slowness and intentionality
Mhm.
to that experience. And yeah, I started doing the ceremonies, and that's how you and me connected at one of them. And
Yeah,
it's
I
I've got
loved
kits for
it,
sale now, and so
which
it's
is
been really
so
fun.
cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, I loved the ceremonial space. I think what called to me on it was also like a healing of the sister wound,
Yeah.
um I loved that, and I just loved the idea too of honoring my a part of my body that way, and
Yeah.
creating a more loving relationship versus coming from like a judgmental place, like, oh, leaning more outy or da da da, or this,
Hmm.
am I normal, or like all some of
Yeah.
those common questions, and like really get to, I get to speak from my experience. It's like I loved, a piece of it where it's like, oh, I look and see what messages my yoni has for me, or
Hmm.
that kind of thing. Like, do I see a flower? Or do I see a
Yeah.
butterfly? Or like, I love that aspect of it too. And so it's very beautiful and connective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with the
It
yoni casting kit, I'm curious. So do they do that on their own? I think I saw something where you may be leading a ceremonial space or
Yeah.
guided.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
for the launch of them, which is kind of over by now,
Yeah.
just for the listeners.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but the launch, like the pre-launch of them, like so it was like my first,
Yeah.
I did a couple beta tests, and then okay, we're gonna do this, and I got all of the kits together, and like kind of as a celebration, putting together a online like virtual ceremony, which I've never
Hmm.
done anything like that before. So I'm really curious how that's going to go. Have only done it in person. And so I'm hoping, to be able to still create that container and it still be a good
Yeah.
experience for people. Cause there is something about in-person things, and there also is something
Hmm.
about like the sisterhood, in
Hmm.
the live in-person ceremonies, you get a partner, a sister that you are giving and receiving um,
Hmm.
the casting to and for. And so that's a really
Hmm.
beautiful experience as well. And I also can recognize that not everybody's ready for that.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, so guiding them through, an intentional and ceremonial experience, and as well as instructions, similar to how I did in the live space with you.
Hmm.
So I have that. And then for people who aren't available to join that, or if people order after, like, because they're still available to
Yeah.
purchase, it's just like this
Okay.
particular date
Yeah.
um, is not, I mean, unless you get your kit on time, it won't be
Yeah.
available.
Yeah.
But every kit comes with like step by step written instructions, as well as like I made a video
Hmm.
that I privately posted on
Oh, cool.
YouTube. So that way you can be, because I'm more of a visual learner, and so like I felt like that
Me
was
too.
missing for me in my experience of having that, like, okay, what is it supposed to look like, or like, so took care
Hmm.
of that with the video. And so every kit comes with that, all the supplies you'll need, and yeah, the instructions on how to do it. And there's technically enough in each kit to do two,
Oh,
just because
cool.
it's like sometimes you might mess up, and then like it's really good to be able to
Yeah.
like be able to have another try if I'm not like there helping you.
Hmm.
um
Yeah. Or if there's like, if you want to do like
Somebody could
more
help you do
private,
it.
like one, yeah, someone can help
Yeah.
you, you can help them. I love that aspect too.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're available, and I can share the link with you, and if people want
I'd
to
love that.
get on that, they're
Yeah, I'll put it in the note.
150. Yeah,
Hmm.
they're $150, and it includes everything, and then as well as shipping in the US.
Lovely. I
Yeah.
can't wait to share that. I know when I shared it with a girlfriend of mine, and she's like, "This is incredible." I think right now she's in Mexico, so maybe when she comes back to the States, she can get a kit and honor her, a part
Yeah.
of herself
Yeah, that'd
that
be
way.
fun.
It's like how
Yeah.
cool to treat ourselves with that reverence. And then you can do all
Yeah.
kinds of cool things and decorate. Like I spray painted mine gold.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Golden pussy. No.
Golden pussy. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, we could get creative though, do some markers, some glitter, like all
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love
have fun with
for
it.
somebody, I
Oh
have
yeah.
one girl that painted hers like the universe, she painted it kind of like a
Oh, that's so
bluish, and then
cool.
she like speckled like white paint on it. And so it really looked, I was like, dude, this is like the Yoni verse. I love it so much. So I love it when people get
Oh,
creative like that.
oh, I love that.
Another
That kind
friend
of
of mine
speaks
was
to what
like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Another friend of mine was
about
talking
going
about
inward.
exactly painting it like the Mother Mary or Mother Magdalene, because that was the
Mm.
shape of hers. It had very much like the hood, and so it's interesting
Mhm.
too. Like you were talking about, we're all different, we're all beautiful.
Mhm. I love that, and I think that's a good note to end on too. We're
Yeah.
all different and we're all beautiful.
Mm.
Hmm. Well, how can people find you and the kits?
Yeah. Well, I'm not on Instagram until August, so
Yeah.
but I do have an Instagram, and I'm planning on coming back under a different name. So check out for
Oh,
that.
wow. Okay.
But yeah, nobody knows that except for you. So
Oh, cool. Okay, I get the secret first.
yeah.
The infamous
But right now
secret.
it's Samantha _ Charles. But I'm
Okay,
planning to,
cool.
I made it, my new account is going to be the Somatic Priestess. So
Ooh, I love it.
yeah, doing that. And I do have a website, but mostly I'm kind of on Instagram, and you can always reach out that way or through my website. I have a newsletter and, the podcast that I do weekly
Mhm.
as well. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
So beautiful. Awesome. Thank you.